let's talk about desire. Not the poetic, star-crossed lovers kind, but the raw, messy, inconvenient biological urges that keep the species going. For most of history, those urges were seen as a problem to be solved, usually by people who were very, very angry at their own bodies. In the mid-1800s, America was gripped by a different kind of fever. It wasn't gold or land, it was purity. There was a whole movement of people who believed that if you ate something too spicy, too flavorful, or too exciting, you were basically inviting the devil to take up residence in your loins. They thought flavor was a gateway drug to sin. Today's story is about a man who wanted to save your soul by making your breakfast as boring as humanly possible. He was a doctor, a religious zealot, and a man who believed that the secret to a moral life was a very, very quiet digestive tract. He wanted to build a utopia of the bland. What he ended up building was a sugar-coated empire that would have made him scream in horror. This is Hindsight. Enter John. It's the 1870s, and John is the superintendent of a world-famous sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan. Think of it as a high-end spa for the Victorian elite, but instead of massages and mimosas, you get enemas and grueling exercise. John was a true believer. He was part of a religious sect that thought the end of the world was coming, and the best way to prepare was to be clean. To John, meat was cadaverous. Spices were irritants. He believed that stimulating foods led to stimulating thoughts, which led to, you guessed it, the ultimate Victorian sin, self-vice. He was convinced that the American diet of greasy pork and heavy bread was turning the population into a bunch of oversexed degenerates. He needed a weapon. He needed a food that was nutritious, easy to digest, and so utterly devoid of joy that it would keep the youth of America focused on their prayers instead of their hormones. John wasn't working alone. He had a younger brother, Will. Now, Will wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a visionary. He was basically John's overworked errand boy, the guy who kept the books and did the heavy lifting while John played God with his patients' colons. One day in 1894, the brothers were trying to make a digestible form of granola. They left some cooked wheat out for too long. When they came back, it was stale. Being cheap and being obsessed with not wasting God's bounty, they decided to run the stale grain through some rollers anyway. They expected long sheets of dough. What they got were thin, crispy flakes. They toasted them. They served them to the patients, and the patients actually liked them. For the first time in his life, John had created something that people wanted to eat twice. He called it granos. He didn't care about the taste. He cared that it was the ultimate anti-passion food. It was crunchy, it was brown, and it was aggressively boring. It was perfect. But here's where the purity starts to rot. Will, the younger brother, saw something John didn't. He saw a gold mine. He realized that while the patients liked the flakes, the rest of the world probably wouldn't eat them unless they tasted like, well, food. Will suggested a radical, blasphemous idea. Add sugar. John exploded. Adding sugar to a health food was like putting a strip club in a cathedral. It defeated the entire purpose. To John, sugar was just another stimulant. It was a poison that would lead to the same moral decay he was trying to prevent. The brothers fought for years. It was a civil war fueled by ego and starch. Finally, Will had enough. In 1906, he bought the rights to the process, moved out of his brother's shadow, and started his own company. He doubled down on the sugar, hired the best ad agencies in the country, and turned his brother's anti-sin medicine into a global sensation. John spent the rest of his life suing his brother, claiming Will was commercializing a sacred medical discovery. He died bitter, still convinced that the world was going to hell in a handbasket, and that his brother was the one driving the bus. The irony is thick enough to choke on. The man who invented this food did it because he wanted to stop you from having fun. He wanted to suppress your animal urges and help you keep focused on the divine. Instead, his creation became the foundation of a multi-billion-dollar industry that thrives on the exact thing he hated: instant gratification, massive sugar rushes, and colorful mascots designed to hook children before they can even read. The doctor was John Harvey Kellogg. The brother was Will Keith Kellogg. And the moral breakfast they fought over? Kellogg's Corn Flakes. So the next time you're pouring a bowl of cereal, remember John. He didn't want you to enjoy your morning. He wanted to save your soul with a flake of stale wheat. But in the end, the sugar won. It always does. I'm your host, and this is Hindsight, because history is never just what's on the page.